In this video, we are going to build out our checkout page. So here to set up a checkout page, let's look at what we need. We know that we need a new route that will point to a checkout component. And then inside of this component, we need access to our cart items. So we need to connect this checkout page and our cart context. Then we need to display the items inside of our cart, and we want to be able to modify their quantities. We also want to be able to remove these items and, in course, also reflect an accurate total. So let's build out this connection and the components and then start thinking about how to create the actual functionality. So back inside of our application, I am going to build a new folder in the routes, and I'm going to call this checkout. As for the checkout component itself, I'm going to make the checkout.styles.sass. And also, I want to make checkout.component.jsx. Here, as we do before, we want to import in our styles page. So let's bring that in. Declare checkout is equal to a functional component that for now just returns a div. And inside of that div, I just want to make an H1 that says I am the checkout page. I'm going to export this by default. And then what I'm going to do is go back into our app.js, import in the appropriate file, and then I'm going to create a new route for checkout, and like so. And then, of course, we need to make some kind of connection between what we have to this page. And as we know, inside of our cart dropdown, we have this button that takes us to the checkout. So how do we circumvent this button so that when you click the button, it navigates us to the checkout route? Well, there's actually a hook that we get from React Router DOM. And this one is called use navigate from React Router DOM. Use navigate is a hook that allows us to get a navigate function. Like so. When you call it, this navigate function will allow us to actually go to checkout. So here if I say const go to checkout handler, this is just a function that calls navigate to /checkout, like so. And now, if I just attach this to the onClick, like so, and then we go back to our application, and now if we open our cart and we click go to checkout, we see our checkout page. So now what I want to do is I want to get these cart items into my checkout page. So how do we do that? So in order for us to list out our cart items, let's think about what we need to do inside of our checkout component. The first thing is we probably want to import in the cart context as well as the use context hook so that we can access the values. So I'm going to first import in use context from React. And then I want to import in the cart context. So let's go up again to our context, cart context. And then I'm going to destructure off cart items, which is equal to use context passing in cart context. As for the cart items, let's just make a div that will contain them, and we will just map through them. And we get the cart item. And for the cart item, let's just return an H2 that has the cart item name. Actually, no, let's display the quantity as well, because that's what we need to be modifying. So let's be more explicit. Let's return back a div, and inside of the div will contain the H2 that contains both the name as well as the actual quantity. So we need to destructure these values off from the cart item. So let's do const ID, name, and quantity. from our cart item. And then for the div, we need to give the key of the ID. So just a very simple, basic HTML structure that will show us that we are indeed getting the correct cart item. Now back inside of our application, we see that we have our cart items. We have our title, we have our quantity, and now what we need to do is figure out if we can create some functionality that will allow us to set the left and right values. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first come back into our cart dropdown and into our checkout component. From our checkout component, I want to just create some left button, and let's just call it something obvious, like decrement. And let's also add another one called increment. So what I want to do is when I click increment, I want to actually increase the quantity. So how do we do this? Well, what we know is that we have the cart item currently. With the cart item, I want to be able to increase the quantity of this cart item. Otherwise, I want to decrease it. So as we know, we already have that functionality built in, which is our add item to cart. This add item to cart, though, the way that it works is that it looks inside and it takes a product to add. But what are we doing with this product to add? We check to see if this ID matches the cart item ID. If it does, then we just increase the quantity on that cart item. Otherwise, we spread it through. But the thing to keep in mind is that we will never reach this part of the code because we are always going to make sure that this existing cart exists. Of course it does, because it's already in the cart item. It's cyclical. So for this reason, all we need to do then is just take our add item to cart and just attach it as an on-click here, like so. And then what we pass to this add item to cart is just our cart item. If we save this, and now we come back, we see that it's a little bit unclear. Let me just add this in a way where we can see it from each other. I'm just going to add a break element, which will give us some space between the different spans. And now if I click increment, there we go. We see it increasing exactly as it should. So now what we have to do is do the decrement. So my challenge to you, if you haven't already tried it out, is figure out how to create this decrement counter. It's going to be similar to increment, but a couple things you want to consider is that when you decrement, you want to decrease this number. And if you hit 0, you want to remove the item from the cart. So try that out and let's do it together.